Hello, and welcome to another episode of Finding Mr. Height, the podcast. I'm your host, Allie Jackson, and I am bringing you my positive and practical approach to dating, relationships, and a whole lot else about life, brought to you from my lived experience. Welcome back. Today, we are doing a listener questions episode, a hot topics episode. I love this format because the questions you all send in are so good, and it's been a while since we did our last one, so I'm excited. And I want to read them out to you or read you the concepts before we get into the media mention, because I think you'll notice there's a little bit of a through line running through all of them. And I selected them together for this episode for a reason. So first, we have a first-time manager who's completely in her head about stepping into a leadership role, feeling a little imposter syndrome. We have a single mom who's getting back into dating, trying to figure out how to handle the kid disclosure conversation on the apps. We have someone who left a 3-year relationship that wasn't bad, it just wasn't right. And we have someone who's been on 15 dates in the last 6 months and is just hitting a wall with kind of the performance of all that. And then lastly, we have a listener who's been talking to a guy that she really likes for a while, but can't figure out how to get out of that texting stage. So 5 very different situations, right? But when I read them all, what I kept coming back to was this feeling of being stuck between wanting something and not being able to get out of your own head or your own way to get it, or not sure what the path towards getting it looks like, or feeling like that path is just such a slog. And it turns out there's actual data on this. So before we get into the questions, I want to share this week's media mention because I think it sets up everything that we're going to talk about really well. It is a piece from Psychology Today. It's called "Survey Data Shows We're Now in a Dating Recession." And it was written by a social psychologist, also a professor, Teresa DiDonato. And it came out last month in May. I think it really puts real data behind something that a lot of people have been feeling for a while, and something that I see in listener question submissions for the pod, in AMAs on Instagram, in the DMs that I get. So there was this large-scale survey of over 5,000 unmarried adults between 22 and 35. And that study found that we are officially, as the article says, in a dating recession. The thing that makes this interesting, though, a dating recession meaning fewer people are dating. But what makes this interesting is that it's not because people have stopped wanting relationships. About half the people surveyed said that they were interested in starting one, but most of them just aren't dating. The stat that really threw me was that 29% of men between 25 and 35 have never gone on an actual date. And for women, that number was even higher, 38%. Never gone on a date, but wants a relationship. And that gap is what this whole piece is about. Not putting it on these people that if they've never been on a date, but it's more so that the fact that that is happening speaks to this broader problem that so many people are facing. And so the research points to a couple things about what's going on here. And the biggest thing that is the through line of all the questions that I mentioned is low confidence. So in that data, 71% of men and 79% of women said that they didn't feel confident enough to ask someone out or put themselves out there. And less than a third of people think that they have the ability to bounce back after a romantic rejection. So combining those two things becomes a real problem, right? When you think about how much rejection is baked into just the premise of dating, that becomes a big problem. And there's also this interesting point about dating apps specifically, because the piece describes the generation that was sold apps as a dating solution, millennials, now seeing them as this really cold place, very commercialized, dating apps are a business. And although we understand that everybody needs to make money, that still feels very cold and unfeeling and an ineffective path to actual connection. That's the perception. And that wasn't the perception when dating apps first came out, when they were new, right? I'm thinking back to when I was in my 20s, when Bumble came out, when Hinge came out, Tinder came out a little bit before that. But in that era, it was seen as, oh my God, we now have this new amazing way to connect with people. And doesn't that bring us all closer together? And that really isn't the sentiment anymore. And the phrase that the piece used is learned helplessness, which I think is exactly right. It's you swipe, you match, Nothing goes anywhere. You swipe again, you match again. Maybe this time you start talking to somebody, but then that doesn't go anywhere. And at some point, your brain just starts to ask why you're bothering. And this is true outside of dating too, right? Like I included a career question for a reason. Well, one, I love answering career questions, but two, I think that this translate into career as well, especially in the job market that we're in right now, which is very much an employer's market. It feels like for people that I've talked to that are job hunting, like you're sending applications out into the abyss and nothing is happening and nothing is happening and nothing is happening. And so that learned helplessness continues in multiple aspects of our lives these days. So, and again, your brain is asking, well, why am I even bothering? And so I think that this is the perfect frame for everything that we're going to talk about today with these questions, because so many of these questions are really about the same thing. It's about wanting something, whether that's connection or, more expertise or confidence at work, or, wanting this thing that you're not perceiving yourself to have yet, and getting stuck somewhere in between the desire and the follow through. So I found all that to be very interesting. I'm excited to get into the listener questions. On my end lately, I have truly just been enjoying summer in the city. I am so happy that I decided not to travel anywhere until much later in the summer. Like the first time that we're really going anywhere major is to the beach with Skyline's family in August. And I'm just so happy because I love summer in the city so much. I love it so much. It reminds me how much I love New York City. Like this, I guess, story could happen at any season, but it just feels more likely to happen in the summer. An example is Skyline and I did an impromptu date night on a random Tuesday this past week. And we decided to go to this Italian spot that we absolutely love and we don't get to very often. It's called Santa Ponza. It's so good. If you like Italian and you ever go to Brooklyn, highly recommend. I think it's technically in Bushwick. It's on the border of Bushwick and Bed-Stuy, and I don't actually really know where the technical border is, but it's so good. And they have a lovely little outdoor garden. So that's kind of where the warm weather fits in, because we were like, oh, it's really nice out and it wasn't crazy hot out. Let's go to Santa Ponza. Let's sit outside. And we were looking for a bar to get a drink at before we had dinner. And so we're searching in the area, we're looking around, and we see this jazz club that I've never heard of before. It's called Ornithology Jazz Club. Had no idea there was a jazz club over there. So we're like, oh, let's go check that out before we go to dinner. So we walk up, turns out it's two different spaces. So there's Ornithology Jazz Club and then there's Ornithology Cafe. It's $20 cover and then no minimum once you get in there, which for jazz clubs in New York, at least, that's pretty unusual. Usually there's some sort of minimum after you pay the cover. Brooklyn, I guess. And it was so lovely. And it was like a random Tuesday night that we just wandered into this jazz club in Brooklyn. And we were then watching live jazz and having a cocktail. And then your cover is good for the entire night. And they have multiple shows each night. So we had a drink. We watched the band at the one place. Then we went to dinner. We walked back. We watched a band at the other place. It was just such a lovely evening and so nice out. And that's just an example of like the things that I really love about New York and summer in the city. So it was a really lovely week. We also went to a concert. We saw Jimmy Eat World outdoors at Pier 17, which is like a rooftop venue in like the very, very southern tip of Manhattan. Amazing venue that I had never been to. I've never seen a concert there. Gorgeous view. Like, could not imagine a better view. It's got the Brooklyn Bridge in the background. The skyline is behind you. I was transported back to high school, like jumping and singing along. It's very similar to the Yellow Card concert the week prior. It was just so fun. And today, one of my long distance besties comes into town. I'm so excited to see her, and we're doing all sorts of girl stuff all weekend. We're having a girls' night out tonight, and then tomorrow we are going to the Mermaid Parade in Coney Island, which is literally, as the name suggests, a giant parade of people dressed as mermaids. It's so fun. I've done it for the last few years in a row. And it's just a lovely, lovely, lovely time in the city, and I'm having the best time. And there are also 2 surprise dates coming up that I am excited to tell you all about when they happen. So Skyline and I are both planning a surprise date this month because last month mostly I was traveling so much that there just wasn't a time for it. So moved mine to June. We're doubling up. I am taking him to Cold Spring, which is a town north of New York City, right on the Hudson River. So we can take Metro North, a train right up there. We're going to hike. We're going to do a picnic. By the time you're listening to this, we'll have already gone. So I will recap you next week. And I'm really excited to just like spend time outside. Hopefully it's not crazy hot on the day that we're going or like crazy crowded, because a lot of people like to do these types of things in the summer. And then he's taking me somewhere. I don't know where next week. So I will come back with that recap. And the other very fun thing that we did this week is we had our final ring appointment. It's been such a fun process designing an engagement ring and like working with him and figuring out like what we like and making tweaks and all of these things. And we saw the final version. We saw like a wax model. And I'm just so excited. I'm so excited. I am now on not even BCC. I am off. I am off the chain. I do not know what will be happening now. But I'm really excited about it. It's so pretty. It feels so us. And I just like, I just looked at it and was like, oh my God. Like it was just such a wonderful experience seeing it, and even seeing it in hot pink wax made me feel that way. So I can only imagine what it's going to feel like when it is an actual ring on my finger. And it's just been really fun doing it with him. Highly recommend ring shopping and or designing if that's your thing with your partner. It's been so fun. So let's get to these listener questions. Okay. Question 1. I just got promoted to my first manager role and I'm completely in my head about it. I've always been the one asking for advice and now I'm supposed to be the one giving it. Honestly, it's making me feel like a fraud. I don't want to come across as someone who doesn't know what she's doing, but I also don't want to fake confidence I don't yet have. How do you actually step into authority when you still feel like the same person you were before the title changed? Is this just imposter syndrome, or is there something more I should be doing to actually grow into this role? So relatable. So relatable, especially because I feel that most companies do not do a good job of manager training. I had the very, very, very good fortune to be at a large company that had a very built out training program when I was first promoted into a manager role. But therefore I received training, even still not as much as I wish I had, but I received some training on like how to do this thing, right? I have yet to be, prior to that or since then, I have yet to be at a company that provides the same. Like I just got so lucky. So I first want to say that this is so normal because like exactly like you said, your title changes, but it was like, hey, yesterday I was, an individual contributor and today I'm a manager. Like it's only been 24 hours. And most companies are not preparing you for that transition. And a lot of times you are also now potentially managing people who were very recently, literally yesterday, your peers. And that is something that I think is the most difficult thing. It sounds like the way that you phrased the question, you got promoted, it sounds like it's internal. So that is also a tricky thing and very normal. Like that gap that the title change before your identity has, that is very, very normal, not a red flag at all. I think imposter syndrome is loudest right after a transition. Not because you're unqualified, like it's right there in the name, it's a syndrome, right? But it's because you haven't yet accumulated enough evidence that you can in fact do this new thing that you're not familiar with. And I'd like to provide you with a reframe because you mentioned faking confidence. I had a manager once tell me that I needed to instead borrow confidence. And at the time, she literally phrased it, why don't you borrow some confidence from me? Because I have confidence in you. So I wouldn't have promoted you otherwise. So borrow some of that. Borrow some of my confidence in you until you have your own confidence in yourself. One of my favorite bosses, if you couldn't tell. She was incredible. And really what that helped me to do was to act like the manager that I wanted to become, not the one I thought that I should already be, because it makes total sense that I'm not yet the manager that I would like to be, literally the day that I became one. I had another manager actually say something to me that at the time I was like, ooh, but in retrospect, I think made a lot of sense. She told me that she expected newly promoted people to be below expectations when they are newly promoted. Ideally not by their next performance review. But she said to me, you just got promoted. I expect you to be below expectations of the role that you literally just took on. Hopefully not that far below, right? Like you're getting promoted because you are ready for that role, typically speaking. And a lot of times you're probably already doing a lot of those things. But that was able, as a high achiever and somebody who had previously gotten a lot of above expectations reviews and was in that particular role feeling like I was kind of failing at the time, that was really necessary for me to hear, even if it was hard to hear. So the best managers, I say all this to say, the best managers are not the ones that have all the answers. They're the ones who know how to ask the questions that they don't have the answers to and also create safety for their team. I think the best advice I ever got about how to be a manager was that not everybody wants to be managed the same way that you do. And that doesn't mean that you need to be able to read their mind to know how they want to be managed. It's just that understanding that they may not want to be managed the same way that you do that is necessary. And a practical reframe for you with that is that it is now your job to be useful to the people that you manage. Like I literally to my teams, I've been like, use me, like whether that's for my expertise, whether that's for my knowledge about the leadership at the company, whether that's for something that you don't have time for that you need my help with, use me. Whether that's because you want to get better at something, use me. I want to be useful. And the best managers are the ones that are able to be useful to their team. Last thing I'll say, the same skills that got you promoted, whatever those are, whatever those relevant skills are in your industry, those same skills are the ones that are going to make you a good manager. You already have them. You just need to augment them. And that is not necessarily an inherently obvious thing that you're just supposed to know how to do. Most companies assume that you're just supposed to know how to do it. Unfortunately, there's a lot of resources you can seek out. You know, not even things you need to like pay for, like classes you can take, but like resources on the internet, things you can read, asking your team, how do you like to be managed or how can I best be helpful for you is huge. I did an entire episode about this on the Patreon, actually. It's a bonus episode that's available to all patrons. If you sign up now, the new tier that I have, you can hear all the bonus episodes. I did a whole episode about how to be a good manager. So if you're interested in this topic and you want to dive even deeper, I talked for like 30 minutes about it. So you can go there. I will put the link to that episode in the show notes. Okay, our next listener says, single mom here, getting back out there for the first time in a few years. And my biggest dating app anxiety right now is how to handle the kid disclosure situation. I'm never going to hide that I have a kid, but I can't figure out the right way to present it. The have kids stamp feels kind of invisible, and I spend every match paranoid that they didn't notice it. But putting it in my bio feels like it's making it my whole personality, and I worry it's the first thing someone processes when they're deciding whether to swipe in 2 minutes. Also, to note, I personally don't want photos of my kid on an app at all. And I feel like single dads don't carry the same stigma around this. The double standard is definitely very real. First of all, to validate that last part of your submission, like you even just see it on social media, right? In general, like forgetting about for a second, single dads versus single moms, dads versus moms. Single dads are often perceived as devoted, and single moms are often perceived as complicated or a package deal in like a negative framing that single dads often, not always, but often don't get. So you're not wrong that double standard absolutely exists, and I hate it. I hate it. So I want to validate that for you. I would recommend using that stamp, as you called it, or like tag or whatever, the has kids tag, along with, if the app that you're using includes it, your like future desire. So in a lot of cases, it can say, you know, have kids, don't want more, have kids, do want more, have kids, open, whatever. That exists to do the filtering work for you so that you don't have to lead with it in your bio. Because your bio it's your personality. It's not your resume. And you don't owe anyone your full context in the first 2 seconds, right? I would say that the tag on your profile that you have kids plus an early in chat disclosure is a great middle ground. I would do that with a natural, confident reference to your kid, singling that they're a fact about your life, not a confession. Like, I think that you can set the tone with what that disclosure looks like as oh, and by the way, like, I do have a son, or, however you want to phrase it, or you can kind of weave it in. The other option versus having it like loud in your bio, as to your point, like the first thing about you, the other option is to weave it into your prompts. I'm totally with you about pictures of kids on dating apps. I agree with you. But I think you can weave it into your prompts in a way that doesn't necessarily make it your whole personality if you want to. So that could look like, a typical Sunday for me is one of the prompts on Hinge, right? You could say something like, hitting the farmer's market with my 7-year-old son, or man, your 7-year-old probably doesn't like to go to the farmer's market, but whatever you do with your kid, you could weave that into one of your prompts. Maybe it's one of your last prompts, so there's more about you as a person first, if you want to. I also think it is fully valid to just have the tag and then weave it into conversation. Like, if somebody matches with you and doesn't notice, the first conversation is going to surface it quickly. And if that becomes a red flag for them, like if they're scared off by either your mention of it or that tag on your profile, that's not the person for you. Like, you're using that as a filter for a reason. And so, although I fully agree with you that double standard exists, and I really wish it didn't, and it sucks, if there is a person who is like under the influence of that double standard, that's not going to be the person you want to date anyway. Let them see themselves out. Okay, our next question. This listener says, "Hi, Allie, I'm 34 and I just ended a 3-year relationship that wasn't bad, but it just wasn't right. Everyone around me keeps saying I'm so brave and that I'll find someone better, but honestly, I just feel behind. My friends are getting married and having kids, and I feel like I hit reset on a timeline that I was already stressed about. I know logically that leaving was the right call, but I also feel like I'm grieving the relationship and the future I thought I was building. So how do I actually process that without letting timeline anxiety take over completely?" You're grieving two things at once. You're grieving the relationship and the imagined future. And a 3-year relationship is a lot of imagined future, understandably. Like, 3 years in with somebody, you are absolutely planning a future with that person. And it feels real. Like, it's very tangible at that time, right? But those two things require different processing, I think. And this is one of the hardest breakup types. Like, not bad, but not right, is one of the hardest breakup types, because it's easier to be mad at somebody. Not that I want a bad thing to happen to you. Not that I wish that this person was horrible at all. But oftentimes processing that kind of breakup is easier because you have something to be pissed about. And in the situation that you have, there's no villain. There's no clear reason to be angry. It's just a loss, even though it's the right thing. And I know that your friends and people around you are very well-meaning when they make comments like "you're so brave," but those types of things can also feel super invalidating when like you're just feeling behind. And so often those types of comments are coming from people that are not in the situation that you're in. Like, this is just personal experience and what I've observed, but I have like less often seen somebody who is like is single, let's say, saying to somebody who has just done what you've done, "Oh, you're so brave," versus like the reverse of somebody who's like still in a relationship. And so I think that's one of the reasons that it can feel invalidating. And I also want to acknowledge that I am sitting here giving you this advice in a situation where I am in a relationship. So I am not going to say "you are so brave." And I am going to say that timeline anxiety is a real thing. And I'm really, really, really happy, though, that even though you were anxious about your timeline in that relationship, like you mentioned, you were already stressed about timeline and like now you've hit reset, which I'm going to get to that phrasing. But I am so happy for you that even though you were stressed about your timeline in this relationship, that you didn't let that push you to stay in it and just delay your new timeline. And again, I said we were going to get back to the word reset. Again, I'm going to offer you a reframe. I don't think you are starting over. I don't think you have hit reset. I think you have just stepped sideways onto a new timeline. You haven't moved backwards. You've just stepped sideways. If your original timeline was here, you're watching the video, now you've stepped sideways and you're on a new timeline, but you have learned and grown so much in that relationship that you were in for your potential next relationship. And so you've not hit reset. Like, I understand that you're, when you meet somebody new, there's obviously like a ramp up, right? But you haven't hit reset in the sense that you are fully back in the place that you started. You are just on a new timeline. And that is not the timeline that you were expecting to be on. And that really does require processing. And the comparison trap is super real here, right? Because you have friends around you whose timelines have continued on. But that is not evidence that your timeline is broken. You've just course corrected. And they didn't need to, hopefully. And that's their journey. But it's not the same thing. Like, it's not, I know the comparison trap is so easy to do. And I did it myself in that same situation where I was in an almost 2-year relationship that I decided to end. And all of my friends, at least it seemed that way at the time, were in relationships that were on about the same timeline as mine, and their relationships continued on, and I decided to end mine. And they all married, those people. They all continued on with their timelines, and I didn't. And I had to really come to terms with that and process that and grieve that and backslide a little bit sometimes. And I think that is really hard. And I want you to give yourself credit for that and grace for that is really fucking hard. Again, I'm not going to say you're so brave, but I'm so happy for you. I really am. And you know that it was the right thing. And it's going to get you closer to the right thing. Like, you know that ending this thing was the right thing because this relationship was not the right thing. And it's going to get you closer to what is. The longer you stay in something that's not right for you, the further you get from the thing that is. And you know that. It doesn't make the anxiety, the timeline, the comparison fully go away. So I won't pretend that it does. But I hope that you're able to find some solace and relief in that you are at least not on the wrong timeline. You are so much closer to the one that's going to be right for you. And there are people, by the way, that do not course correct in the way that you have and end up in a situation that you absolutely do not want to be in. And that probably will not manifest itself for a while, and nor do I want that for anyone in your life or any of your friends, but just statistically speaking, it's likely going to happen to someone that you know. And that will provide perspective for you, as it has for me, that I wish I had back then. And that's always true, right? Like, I'm always thinking, man, I wish I had this perspective 5 years ago, 10 years ago, however many years ago. So I am very happy for you. And I know that you will be able to process this, and I just want to validate all the stuff that you're feeling. Okay. Our dating burnout question. This listener says, I've been on probably 15 first dates in the last 6 months, and I'm starting to feel burnt out. Not from the dating itself, but the performance of it. Putting on the outfit, doing the small talk, figuring out if there's chemistry in like 90 minutes. I do want a relationship, but I'm starting to dread the process of getting there. Is it okay to take a break, or does stepping back make it harder to build momentum? And how do you know if you're burnt out or just being avoidant? This goes back to the article that I talked about, the study that I talked about in the media mention of the dating recession and the lack of people dating or fewer people dating, but not because they don't want a relationship anymore. And that is right where this listener is. This is right where you are. Burnout and avoidance can feel very similar, but they have different roots. I think burnout comes from depletion and avoidance comes from fear. And I think if you really get down to how you are feeling going into and coming out of these dates, to me in your question, it sounds like what you're describing is burnout or potentially disillusionment, discouragement versus that avoidance that potentially stems from fear, but only you can really know that for yourself. That performance exhaustion is so real. Like first dates have a specific kind of, let's call it social labor that compounds over time, especially if you are going on dates where you feel like you were kind of carrying the conversation. I remember how exhausting that can feel. And taking a break is not the same thing as giving up. So I would ask yourself this when you're thinking about, is it okay to take a break? The answer is absolutely categorically yes. Does taking a step back make it harder to build momentum? Your second question. Not always. I don't think so. Here's what I would ask yourself. Are you showing up in the way that you want to show up on these dates right now? Or are you stunted by this burnout? Are you stunted by this exhaustion? And so you are now actually not showing up to dates in the way that you really want to, in the way that's going to lead to the best outcome because you're so exhausted. Are you not putting in the same level of effort in your dating app conversations? Are you not getting back to people on dating apps? Maybe even ghosting people because you're just so burned out. That happened to me in the past. If that's the case, I actually think a break is the best way to eventually gain back momentum, because you don't really have momentum right now if that's what's happening. You have inertia. And I think those are two different things, and maybe definitionally they're not. But I would like to separate the two words. I think momentum is a good thing. It is, and I think personally, I always define it as a good thing. You have like something driving you forward. Inertia, in this new definition that we're going to make, is not necessarily a good thing. It is just an object in motion tends to stay in motion. And because you're going, you're going. And you're not going because you want to be going. You're just going because you already were. And those are not the same things, even though maybe technically they are. But to me, emotionally, they're not. And I don't think they're going to lead to the same outcome. So that is what I would ask yourself in terms of if taking a break is the right thing for you. Because also, dating is not a sport where you lose your conditioning. The right connection does not require you to have that conditioning to have been actively dating immediately before it. It's not the same thing. And I think a break with intention is actually way better than a break by default. A break by default could look like you're just not replying to people on the apps, or you're canceling dates, or you're not reaching out to somebody where you had a great date and you would want a second one. And therefore you end up taking a dating break, but only because you're not being intentional about dating. I don't think that serves the same purpose as taking an intentional break where you are actually not forming new connections. That, I think, is a way to recharge yourself and feel less burned out going into it the second time. I don't think that an unintentional break, like the first way I mentioned, is going to do that for you. So ask yourself these questions. Ask yourself if you are really dreading the process of dating or if you are dreading the outcome. If you are fearful of the outcome or if you are burned out by the process. And that can hopefully help you delineate and figure out what's going on. Okay, our last question. I've been talking to someone I genuinely like for about 3 weeks, but we haven't met yet because of scheduling. We're both super busy and the timing just hasn't worked. Conversation is great and I don't want to come on too strong by pushing to meet sooner, but I also don't want to build up this version of him in my head that doesn't match reality. At what point does texting without meeting become a problem? And how do you actually bring up wanting to meet without making it weird? Okay, wanting to meet's not weird, ever. Literally ever. Wanting to meet is not weird. That is why we are on a dating app. I'm assuming you met this person on a dating app. You've clearly listened to the pod before. I mean, obviously, because you submitted this question. Because you mentioned the fact of not wanting to build up a version of him in your head. That is the number one reason why I do not recommend talking too much before a first date, even if that first date can't happen for a while. At 3 weeks, you are absolutely certainly at the point where I would be pushing for a meetup. Maybe you could do a FaceTime if your schedules like genuinely don't align. But the longer that you spend talking to somebody that you've never met, the higher the disappointment is going to be for you if you do meet and it's not a connection. But two, the more you risk exactly what you said, building up a version of this person in your head that is different from the version that you are going to meet in person. And that version you meet in person might be perfectly fine, but it's not going to match the thing that's in your head. And that could add some cognitive dissonance for you that makes you then not as excited about them as you are right now. Because texting creates this false intimacy too. Like you know someone before you've actually met them and experienced them in person. And I want you to experience this person in person. And I want them to experience you in person as well. Because the same thing could be happening on their end as well. This isn't just about your own perception of this person. This is also about their perception of you the longer that you talk without meeting up. Again, wanting to meet someone in person is not weird. Don't be weird about it when you ask, but like, I don't think you're going to be based on the phrasing of your question. You could be like, hey, I think we should actually meet up. What are you doing next week? Get something on the calendar. And if this person is genuinely interested and also busy, they will talk to you about their calendar. They will like figure out a time. And if scheduling continues to be an actual obstacle, that is information. If this person is so busy that they cannot get a first date on the calendar with you, is that someone that you even want to date? Like, you shouldn't be their number one priority, right? You're a stranger. They've never met you. But if they can't even get a first date with you on the calendar, what is dating this person going to look like? Is that something you even want? Probably not. So, or if your schedule like fully doesn't align with someone else's and you're never going to be able to see them, is that somebody that you even want to date? Personally, for me, no. So protect yourself from overinvesting in a dynamic that you don't even know. It hasn't even been tested in real life. You don't even know if you're going to like this person in real life. Protect yourself from overinvesting in that by meeting up with them as soon as possible, by suggesting that. And again, if they're not able to within a reasonable timeline the next couple of weeks, that is information for you. And I would recommend pulling back a little bit. I don't know how much you've been talking to them, but I would recommend pulling back a little bit from the frequency of conversation before you've met up to try to slow down this false intimacy building in any way that you can before you end up meeting up with them. All right, that's what we have for today. If you want to submit a question for our next Hot Topics episode, you can do that at findingmrheight.com/podcast. The link is also in the show notes here. It is tinyurl.com/FMHpodQS, like pod questions. So you can click that link or you can go to the website. Either way, I will see you next week.